Local programming on KRWG Public Media made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Fronteras, a changing America. I'm Jonny Coker. The U.S. Mexico border is facing a humanitarian crisis. For decades, our federal government has attempted and failed to pass any sort of major legislation that addresses the asylum process and immigration policy. Our former producer, Andrea Vasquez, brings us this story of little Amal, who traveled to El Paso to bring awareness to these ongoing global immigration issues.
She brings hope to the world of today when there's very little of it.
Little Amal, she's a girl from Syria, and she fled Syria in 2021 when she was 9 years old in search for a new home, in search for her mom, and in search for a safe haven. And now she has become the symbol of solidarity and hope. Children are making 50% of all refugees in the world. It was important for us to bring back dignity, not only a bed and food, but to give them back a voice. And it's funny because Amal doesn't have a voice, but with the imagination of the audience that fills in the gaps. It's an exercise on empathy. It's a way for the audience to not only see numbers on the news, but to see an actual girl that is traveling on her own around the world, trying to find a safe place to be.
The area that we're in right now is emblematic of immigrants and what immigrants can do. You know, we serve unaccompanied immigrant children every single day. We serve thousands of them a year. And so she is an unaccompanied child. She's a child. She's looking for her mother. She's what so many of our clients are. And so I think it's really important to support little Amal, but also the cause.
Through the eyes of Amal, I have been walking across the route of refugees. So for me, Amal, she's not a puppet. We refer to her as a person. She's our little girl. For me, she's a way of learning how to get a step closer to the experience of refugee people, because I'm not a refugee myself, I'm a migrant.
Hey, we were all immigrants at one time. Even if you were born here, your family was of immigrants.
El Paso's the epicenter, right? El Paso is at the heart of where immigration is today. We see so many people coming through El Paso. And even, you know, back to our name, we're the Paso del Norte, right? We're the path to the north. And so I think it's important to recognize that and recognize that we still have so many people that come through this region every single day.
Beauty, beauty is before me. Beauty is behind me.
With being a current associate from Walmart, it means a lot for her coming and showing support for the families, the associates that were affected by that horrible, tragic incident. And I'm just wanted to say thank you for her coming, showing her support, as well as us trying to show support for the refugees.
She has shown me what it means to be scared, to be alone, and it's about giving them back a voice, a dignity. You know, don't forget about them. Don't forget about us, the children. I don't know about the future of little Amal, but what I know is that what's really important about the future of this project is about the voice of these children today and how it's gonna change through time and the impact they're gonna make in the future.
She represents hope, and I think it's also a global recognition of immigration as an issue and the need to really welcome and the importance of us being involved in this issue and continuing to advocate.
And now joining me is Alan Lizarraga, Border Network for Human Rights Communications Coordinator. Alan, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
So tell me about the Border Network for Human Rights. What is y'all's mission and what is it that you do within the borderland community?
Yes, so we're a nonprofit organization based in El Paso, Texas, but pretty much what we do is we educate border residents on their human and constitutional rights. And we do this so that they are able to feel empowered to create a meaningful change in their communities, either in the economic, in the social, in the political. So we were working in border communities for over 25 years. This is actually going to be our 26th year doing this work. We recently opened new offices in Presidio, in Del Rio, and Eagle Pass. So we're expanding our work and we're expanding human rights education along the Texas border.
I see. And so, you know, y'all have been around a long time as an organization. And it's been like 25 years, like you said. What today is the most pressing issue in your mind facing migrant communities?
I think the thing that we're seeing right now, it's an increase in human and civil rights violations. And that it comes with the increase of militarization of our communities. So the border has never been as militarized as it is right now. We not only have Border Patrol, miles and miles of border wall, surveillance is this new technology that's coming up. We now have the Texas state government putting armed soldiers at the border. We have state troopers as well there. And we also have this new rhetoric of invasion, a rhetoric that we know harms us, that has led to really horrible instances of violence. So that's kind of what's creating this new human and civil rights violations in our communities.
Yeah, and you bring up that rhetoric, and there are certain parts of our communities and even, you know, certain wings of the Republican Party. I mean, the presidential nominee, Donald Trump, is calling for, you know, mass deportations and things like that. How do y'all respond to that type of rhetoric?
Our best way to respond to what we're seeing to these attacks is to educate and prepare our community members. We have been doing this work for 25 years. We know what comes with campaigns and with this political narrative around immigration. So we really try to tell our community members that regardless of their immigration status, they have rights. They have the right to remain silent. They have the right to not be searched, either their homes or their person. And we also let them know that they have the right to a due process. They have the right to fight their case in court, to present evidence. So we really try to contrast all this narrative and all this harmful ways of policing or surveilling our communities with human rights education.
And you know, I wanted to ask about Texas Senate Bill 4 that essentially criminalizes, you know, coming from Mexico to the U.S. on a state level. How has that affected migrant communities in Texas, and how have y'all dealt with that so far, honestly?
So the first thing to remember is that immigration and border control is the job of the federal government. That is something that is very clear in our Constitution. That is something that we've been saying since we saw the early versions of what is now SB 4. But for us, again, what's really important is to educate members on what SB 4 does, what powers it gives to regular policemen that are not trained on immigration. But we also have been leading one of the largest coalitions in Texas. We came out with this campaign. It's called the We Will Resist campaign. So we have mobilized regions across Texas, from El Paso to Houston and Dallas, in the interior of Texas, to speak out about how wrong SB4 is, how unconstitutional it is, but to also bring that education to other places where there's no community or organization, or we just haven't been able to get. So yes, SB4 has been something that our communities have been thinking about, something that is keeping us awake at night, but it's also something that has mobilized people. It's mobilizing community members that were not usually in the struggle towards a humane border policy, and now they're getting involved in defending their rights and speaking out about something that is just not constitutional.
I see. So you're basically using it as a fuse that sort of lights the powder keg, maybe, sort of like, at least this is something that's getting people mobilized. Is that how
I think so? I think there has been a lot of fear in our communities, and I think what we want to do is make sure that there's also hope and there's resistance in this as we're navigating ourselves through these hard times. And I think that's what our community has shown us, that they're resilient, that they're willing to keep fighting for their rights, and that they're willing to really fight for what the America that we believe in, an America that is welcoming, an America that gives people the chance to build a better life. And the other narrative that it's hateful, that is painting us as criminals, as invaders, we're willing to fight it and to make sure that our voices remain on top.
Sure. And you know, it's interesting to me, that rhetoric of, you know, invasion and militarization at the border. How does that affect individuals within migrant communities? Because I imagine it's hard to hear all this coming from national media, and especially that word invasion, and looking at immigration as such a one-sided dark thing. What does that do to individuals?
I think what we have to remember is that America really was founded by immigrants. The American dream and the New Ellis Island, they're clear depictions of America being built by immigrants. So to think of the new people that are coming, the new generations of immigrants, of migrants, as invaders, it's not only wrong, but it's really, we're failing what America represents. But this rhetoric impacts not just migrants, but it impacts border residents, many of them who are U.S. citizens. It impacts communities of color. So it impacts all of us, because you're painting someone as a criminal. You're making it seem like their pursuit of a better life is something illegal. And throughout time, we have shown that immigrants contribute to this economy. They pay taxes. They create safer communities. And that is really something that we try to uplift, the border narrative, we call it. And it's something that we continue fighting for, because we know that as this narrative increases, there's also the hate attacks. We saw that in 2019 with the Walmart shooting. A person that drove to El Paso with that mentality, that he believed that there was an invasion happening and that he needed to do something about it. So for us, this rhetoric carries a lot of weight. It carries a lot of, I would say, trauma in our communities, because we have seen the actions that can be taken. And that's why we're responding to it with all these campaigns, with all these mobilizations.
I see. And another thing I wanted to hear your response to was Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. He was coming after Annunciation House, another a nonprofit whose mission was to help migrants. What is your response to the Attorney General coming after them, and what has been the response among the nonprofit communities? Because I can imagine that the other nonprofits in those same sectors saw that and were quite alarmed by that.
I think the message is, if you come for one of us, you're coming for all of us. We all work legally. We do this constitutionally. It's a work that we've been doing for a long time, especially Annunciation House. So for us, really, this is another attempt for the Texas government and these ideals of trying to stop something that we know it's right, trying to stop El Paso or our communities from being welcoming, from giving assistance to people that need it. So for us, this was an attack. Even if it was for Annunciation House, it felt like an attack on us. And we're not going to stop doing this work. We're just going to continue. We're going to continue making sure that our communities are informed. We're going to continue advocating for a welcoming infrastructure, for welcoming policies at our border, regardless of their attempts to try to shut our our infrastructure down.
And Alan, I had something I was curious about myself was migrants coming through El Paso. Texas is passing all of these laws, and at the official level, like Attorney General level, and at the state legislature level, there are these anti-immigration policies. Do you see that, or do you foresee that maybe pushing more migrant communities towards New Mexico or other states that might be, not quite as intent on at least pursuing that type of legal action, I guess I should say?
I think we heard even amongst our communities that fear driving people to think, well, maybe it's time for me to move to Las Cruces or somewhere else in New Mexico. And I think our answer is that we have built Texas to what it is. We have contributed to the economy, we have contributed to the society, and that leaving shouldn't be an option. We need to keep fighting for the Texas that we believe in. But that fear, it's a fear that it's real. It's a fear that many of our communities have, and they're trying to think of ways to ease it on themselves. But I think so. I think that could lead to perhaps people coming to find, a safer place to build their families, to live a life with dignity.
And, we are in the midst of an election year, and it looks like, especially from that national conversation level, that immigration is very well maybe is one of the major talking points, and there is a lot of vitriol coming, and there is a lot of discussion happening. But what do you think? There hasn't been any major immigration reform addressing asylum laws or anything passed in a long time in the United States. So what is the Border Network's position? What needs to be done at the federal level to essentially get us to where we need to be in terms of border policy?
We have been calling for immigration reform for the past, 10, 15 years. An immigration reform that would bring, families together, that would treat every human with equal rights, and something that would put the 11 million people, which is probably more now, in a pathway to citizenship. However, we know that package or that reform it seems far, but we still keep pushing for it. But really what we're working for is for border accountability, for agents at the border to be accountable, to treat migrants that are seeking asylum or that are coming through with respect, with dignity, that they respect their constitutional rights. So these are things that we continue advocating for. These are things that we believe are an answer to the problems that we're seeing. We are also calling for welcoming infrastructure, to have a system that welcomes asylum seekers with dignity, that provides them with the humanitarian aspect, which is clothing, food, medical assistance, but it also provides them and guides them through the legal process that is requesting asylum. So we really do believe that immigration and the way we deal with it is going to change the trajectory of our nation. And as such, we need to start developing more welcoming, more comprehensive procedures and infrastructure at the border. And a lot of the times, our communities are, instead of being uplifted and protected or a system really put in place that helps us, we've been more militarized. There's more militarization, more agents, more police. These are things that are failing already. So we really think that we need to revamp the way that we see immigration and border, at the border as a whole.
I see. And that is a big ask, obviously. But I just want to go back to what you were saying about holding agencies accountable. What is the best way to hold agencies accountable and make sure that everyone is being treated with, making sure that their human rights are not being violated, and make sure everyone's being treated with respect coming through the border?
So we've been having this campaign. It's called the Abuse Documentation Campaign since 2001, where we go out in the community, we talk to community members, and we ask them if they ever had any interaction that could involve an abuse with any law enforcement agency. But in regards to federal enforcement agencies like Border Patrol, ICE, we have been calling for oversight commissions or stakeholder commissions, where border communities, members of the community, NGOs or nonprofits, as well as other partners, are able to discuss what the situation at the border is, how we're responding, and assess if there needs to be changes. there also needs to be a way where people are able to, file complaints and make sure that if an incident does happen, that it doesn't go unanswered, that there is a process to what happened to them. And these are things that we've been advocating for. These are things that we believe could help and really make sure that our communities feel more protected instead of being fearful of our own agents. In El Paso, if you see, there's kids playing in a playground. If they see Border Patrol, they will run, even though they're U.S. citizens. And it's because there is a culture of fear around our own policing agents. So it's really important that we change that narrative, that we understand that these are also people that work with us. These are people that belong to our communities. And all that we want is for the system to work better on behalf of all of us.
And, to follow up on that, does the Border Network have any sort of relationship with those agencies like Border Patrol? Like, do you all have dialogue with them and talk about these types of things or request certain things out of them?
Yes, it's a relationship of pressure. We put pressure, but we also let them know we're here to support. We're here to find ways where the system can work better, where we can improve the system together. And thanks to those relationships, we've been able to have events such as Hugs Not Walls, which is where for half a day, we go to the border and we reunite families that have been separated by this harsh immigration system. And this is due to the relationship that we have with Border Patrol. A relationship of, we are gonna put pressure where you need to, but we're also gonna be of assistance to find ways where we could solve this system and try to make it better for our communities.
And tell me a little bit more about Hugs Not Walls, because I know this is one of the bigger things that y'all do, or at least one of the things that people in the community may have heard about. It's a way to bring people together, right? But I'll hand the floor to you. What exactly is it?
Yes, so this event really is a call to action for our federal government, again, to provide relief to hundreds of families that have been separated by our immigration system. So we saw this happening and we knew that we needed to do something. And we started putting this event together, which is, again, we meet at the middle of the Rio Grande River, and we bring together over 300 families that day, and they're able to embrace each other at the middle of the Rio Grande River for 3 minutes. And this is an event that we've been able to do for, I think this is gonna be our 11th Hugs Not Walls. It's an event that it's emotional, it's hard to see, it's hard to be there, but it's also important, and it's important to raise that question and that call to action again. That families are at the border in our communities and throughout our nation are waiting for a solution, are waiting to be reunited. We had families that haven't seen each other for over 20 years. Families that, that this is the only opportunity to see each other. And sometimes we hear back from them and they tell me, thank you for giving me that opportunity because my dad passed away a couple of days ago. And at least I was able to see him last year. So it's something really hard. It's something that we as a community, as Americans, we need to realize that we're impacting family units, family structures. There's kids that are growing up without their parents. There's grandmothers that haven't been reunited with their kids or with their grandchildren. So this is something that we do, to provide our community that opportunity, but also again to make sure that this doesn't go unnoticed.
Alan, how important is it to spread that type of messaging and that type of rhetoric versus, especially against the backdrop of all this rhetoric of militarization and of, essentially invasion and things like that? How important is it just to have that voice to show what it's really like for people on the border?
I think right now it's really important. It's really hard for someone to be undocumented in Texas or in the U.S. right now, for someone to live at the border right now because of what's happening. So I think it's really important for us all to realize that they're around us, undocumented people are around us, migrants have been coming to the U.S. for years, for many years now, and they do make our country better. America is what it is now because of immigrant labor, because of immigrant contributions, because of taxes paid. And we really want to to let our community know, first of all, that they're not alone, that there's many people fighting for them, and second of all, that we will continue to make this country better, that we are fighting for the face of the America that we will live in.
Alan Lizarraga is the Communications Director for the Border Network for Human Rights. That's all the time we have, but I really want to thank you for coming into our studio today and talking today.
Thank you so much.
That's all for today's episode. Remember, you can stay up on the latest local news at krwg.org. For all of us here at KRWG Public Media, I'm Jonny Coker, and we'll see you next time on Fronteras, A Changing America.